never too late to turn around and start moving in a different direction. And like for me, like that's my story in that moment, but that was my story for 6 years. You are not your worst decision, and you are not your greatest accomplishment. And when you start to define yourself by what you do, that becomes who you are.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing and very special episode of the Superhuman Life. I paused there for a minute, and I'm not sure I wanted to use the word exciting here this week because of the story that we're going to be sharing. I'm not sure if it's one that brings excitement to me, but it's one I know needs to be shared, and I know it's one that everybody needs to hear, whether you're here already listening or whether it's going to be somebody that you're going to share this with. So I'll get into introducing our guest here in a minute, but as you guys know what our mission here is, we're the only podcast in the world that is dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of porn addiction through the power of faith and fitness, and partnered with our company there at Rebuild Recovery. We do so through having these powerful and meaningful conversations on a weekly basis, through creating our daily content with our YouTube channel, and through all our various coaching programs and offerings with our clients and students in the work that we're doing at Rebuild Recovery. So today's conversation, guys, is one that is very close to home. It's very close to the work that we're doing. It's funny because you'll hear me mention it to the guest early on. Like, we're 90 episodes in, and because of the content of the work that we're doing, it's like, why haven't I had this conversation yet? Why haven't I interviewed somebody that worked in the industry? Why has it taken me over 2.5 years? And I think it's because I needed to wait. I needed to wait to meet Josh. I needed to wait to be introduced to him, because this is the story that needs to be shared. So my guest today is Joshua Broome. Joshua Broome was formerly known inside the industry as Rocco Reed, and in 2012 he received the Male Performer of the Year award, which you'll hear about where he was. He wasn't even at the event to accept his award. But Josh grew up in a small town in Iowa, and it was always a dream to get into acting and to pursue a career in entertainment. And he dropped out of college at a very young age, which we get into his story and how he ended up in the industry. So I don't want to share too much here. But we get a lot into the dark details of the industry. What is it like to identify as a prostitute, which is a word that Josh was very intentional about using? What does it do to the psyche of an individual? What does it do to the heart of a person? What does it do to the soul of the people that we're watching, that we're consuming for our own short-term instant gratification pleasure? So there's a couple lenses that we can listen to or watch this interview through. And I'll tell you where I think we all should probably start from. First and foremost, for the men out there that are maybe still struggling with this issue or with this vice, I want you to pay attention and listen through a lens of humanity, realizing that when you sit down to consume pornography, to consume an individual, that what you're watching on that screen is actually another human being. And listening to Josh's details, listening to what he had to put himself through at a psychological level, can maybe be what you need to think about before even entering the .com. And maybe you're not struggling so much with this anymore, but maybe you're a father, maybe you're a mother, and sleeping in the other room every night is an innocent child, an innocent soul. In hearing how easy it was for Josh to be led into, manipulated, coerced, into doing this, not once, but then, once he was in, there kind of was no turning back. So hearing this, watching this is maybe what we need to think about in our parenting, in our conversations with our little ones, to make sure that they're educated on the dangers out there, educated on the snakes of the industry, of how they use manipulative tactics to bring these women and men. We're interviewing a guy today. So those are a couple of the lenses that I think we should listen and watch today's interview through. Now, one thing Josh and I talked about, and I'm recording this intro a couple days after we did the interview, and I'm glad I waited, because one of the things that we talked about early on in the interview was a recent update from the OnlyFans CEO. And if you guys aren't familiar with OnlyFans, real quick, they're a social media membership site that basically is just trafficking pornography. That's what they're doing. And with trafficking pornography, we know what other trafficking is tied to that. So prior to our interview, just a day or two before, Josh and I both were aware of an announcement that OnlyFans CEO came out and said they were removing all pornographic content from their site. So we talked about it, and we were both very excited about what it was meaning for the industry, and it was a good sign. It was a good step forward. But just last night, I was reading that they've reversed that decision in the CEO, and I know it's financially driven, which is unfortunate. But it shows that voices matter, because I know a lot of content creators came out and expressed their frustrations with this, and they got enough people rallying up. So we can't look at this as a defeat for those of us that are trying to remove this drug from the world. We have to continue to fight. We have to continue to put our voices out there, continue to share this message with the world, guys. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer in there. That some of the things we did discuss in this conversation have already changed. Just shows how quickly things can change throughout the world. So hope you guys enjoy today's conversation. It is a long one. I think we went for about an hour and 40, which I don't normally expect to do. But the story was so compelling, and I was so engaged in the conversation, I couldn't cut it off. So there's a lot there. Like I said, it's going to hit home a lot. It's going to hit you in the heart. It's going to hit you in the head. I was moved to tears a few times just in the conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, guys, let's get on today's conversation with the former Male Performer of the Year, Joshua Broome, talking about the dark side of the industry. God bless you guys. Joshua, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
What is going on?
Dude, I'm so fired up for today. You know what? It's actually hard to believe that I'm 90 episodes into having this podcast, and I have not yet had somebody from the industry on. This whole thing started with my transformation. Coming out of a 20 plus year porn addiction myself, and it's something I've wanted to do. I haven't been connected with the right individual, so I'm really excited. And then when I got into researching you even more this past week, just seeing how aligned we are. I heard you say with Rob towards the end of your podcast, you shared your mission for the next 10 years, and to hear you be so vocal and so clear on what it is you're trying to do. I believe you said it was to eradicate the production of pornography over the next 10 years. I was forced in a mastermind group about 2 years ago, right at the beginning of this thing, to get clear on what I wanted to do. It started with me wanting to share my story. It started with me wanting to help, but I got pushed. I got pushed by people that I really look up to, and I'm so grateful to have them in my life. And they're like, "You're not thinking big enough. You're not thinking big enough." And we went on, time after time, until I finally landed on my mission here with this podcast and with our company, Rebuilt Recovery, that we're building, is to eradicate the consumption of porn. And that's what we got really, really clear on is we're not stopping until every man that is struggling with this issue is absolutely free. So I'm so fired up to have you, because you're working the production, you're working one side of the thing, and we're over here, helping the men that are struggling. So I think we're going to have an amazing conversation.
Yeah, I mean, so like my mission doesn't happen without that being, because the demand of something, the consumption of something dictates
Supplies
the
it. Yeah.
production of something.
Yeah.
right? So you know, supply generally controls demand. So
Yeah, and that's why I've had on. I'm involved with a couple, human trafficking organizations over here. I had Layla or Lila from Trafficking Hub on. So yeah, we're doing everything we can. But where I want to start, because I definitely want to really unpack your story and your journey. But we had in our world, we had a very big announcement in the media a couple days ago. So I just want to talk about that and kind of get your take on it. And if people don't know what we're talking about, it's the OnlyFans announcement. So we've seen Visa and Mastercard and American Express, begin to really, get vocal, pulling out of Pornhub recently. But a major announcement was made, and I know you shared it on your social media. But I'm just curious, like, what's your opinion on this as far as like the impact it has on the industry, both from the production side of things and then the consumer side as well. Just if you can, just kind of share like how did you take this and kind of like where are you seeing like this is going to lead us in the future?
yeah, I mean, for me, I'm sure that you can relate to this in a lot of ways. Like when I articulate something, it's really hard for me not to go to fitness or functionality of movement. But like for me, um, I've interacted with so many people that have tweaked like a knee or a shoulder, and then they had it looked at it, and there was this underlining problem that was causing this other problem, right? So there was a sublinear like issue or a foundational issue that this was just really a byproduct of that. And OnlyFans at the end of the day is prostitution. You're selling yourself in some capacity for financial gain. That's prostitution by definition. So you let's call it what it is. And I think like that is something in our culture that we have an issue with. We try to label things other things so that we don't have to address them. And I think that what this does is I get excited about it because it presents an opportunity for those people who are doing that. And like, sure, you might be making X amount of dollars, but at the end of the day, when you lay your head down on the pillow, are you proud of who you are? Are you proud of what you do? Because there's no price that's going to cover up shame. So for me, I get excited about it because these people, while in that moment, it might be like, "Gosh, this really sucks. Like this is how I'm making this money, or this and that." What you're forced to do is take inventory of your life. It's like, man, how important was this to me? Maybe I should do something else, and then maybe for me, it's like maybe you look outside of yourself. Like maybe this was something that was done to intercede on my behalf. Maybe there's this obstacle, this roadblock in my way because someone's wanting me to take a different fork in the road. So like that is my hope. But at the end of the day, like it's evil. It's evil. And we talk about like catalyst or like a sublinear issue prostitution of any capacity, including OnlyFans, it fuels sex profiting. I mean, sex trafficking. It fuels many other things, rape culture. Because the reality is, if you don't see something as if you don't see sex as like transactional and something you should be able to purchase and people as products, if you don't start seeing people that way, you never think as you see a human, you never think about raping that person. Like that mindset is constructed by I see people as less valuable than me and I believe that I'm owed something so I should be able to take it. And porn advertises no doesn't mean no. No means not yet. And that's the danger that lies in porn. So I mean, I'm excited about it because it's a step in the right direction. And then if you mess with someone's pockets, you get their attention. And if you get their attention, you have the opportunity to make a different decision. So
Yeah, no, I love all that. And one thing I've said on the on the human trafficking side, like you don't get to that point where you're buying sex trafficking or you're in that world without having to go through the pornography tunnel. Like there is a direct line that you have to get through, and it happens slowly. You talked about that when you begin to look at people as a product to be consumed. A big portion of our work is built around neuroscience and neuroplasticity and understanding how the brain works. What fires together, wires together. Understanding every time I'm speaking now to to the men that are consuming it, every time you sit down, whether it's at your computer or on your tablet or phone, just in your own private time, you're wiring together, neural connections that are telling your brain person equals product equals consumption. And over time, that becomes the natural default of when you look at other people. So when people talk about, yeah, I feel like porn forces me to sexually objectify every woman I see, and it's based around how your brain is actually wired to this point. So yeah, I mean it's an amazing point to share there.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with someone yesterday, and someone who has been removed from, a lifetime addiction, and he's been clean for 4 years. But he was talking about still he'll find himself in a grocery store and just see a person, and then, like, if he's stressed out or whatever, he can find himself his mind drifting into a direction that he wants no part of, and is fighting so hard to just get rid of that thought processes. But yeah, man, it's like something that I talk about a lot. It's like thoughts, they're like a train. It's like, here comes this thought, you can choose to get on it or not, but you got to know where that thought is taking you. And it's like, if that happens, you have the choice to say, hey, let me remember what that train took me down. Let me, like, that path, that thought processes, that behavior. Remember why I don't want to go there, and I can take it captive and reject it, or I can entertain it. And the thing is, like, it's so. I mean, we can get into this. I'm sure we will, but it's so often it's like you see something you shouldn't, like, you don't necessarily want to see on Instagram, and you can either scroll or you can keep looking. And if you keep looking, it's probably going to cause you to open, like, maybe it's a girl in, a normal swimsuit, and then you click on it, and then there's a more a more revealing picture, and then all of a sudden you're on a porn site and you're like, how did I get here? And it's because you entertained that thought, and that thought took you to a place that you didn't want to go.
Yeah, I'm excited, to get into kind of how you were able to gain some of this self awareness, and I think that's going to be valuable as well. And yeah, it's one thing I always say is like you don't have to believe everything you think. Just because a thought appeared or a trigger occurred, like once you kind of do the beginning work of your own self awareness, it's like now okay, this thought appears, and it's like it's taking you down this place, like you use the word take that thought captive, just like Scripture calls it to do. But it's like okay, now grab it and then sit on it and think about one thing I tell all my guys, a part of our daily work that we do is you spend time every day thinking about what you're thinking about. Where are these thoughts even coming from? Is there something I haven't addressed from my past trauma associated? Is it based around things that I'm consuming, the music, the TV, the shows that I'm watching, the conversations that I'm having with and around people? If you're constantly having the conversation at the gym about objectifying the girl that's like over on the squat rack, like realize like that's gonna where your thoughts are gonna take you when you're by yourself. So it's an understanding of like constant self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's so healthy. And, like, health is this overarching thing. It's not just about exercise and diet. We are, to a certain extent, like, our input. Our input determines our output. So it's like, even if I'm not having those conversations, but if I surround myself with people who constantly have those conversations, and I'm allowing those conversations into my ear, they will have an impact on my life and my thought processes.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So we jumped kind of ahead here. I wanna go back and obviously unpack your story and the things that you had to go through and talk about the real dark side of the industry as much as we can get into with the time allotted here today. Um, so I'll let you guess maybe kind of find the starting point for us. But I know that obviously some of your upbringing, teenage mom, dad not around, obviously probably played a role in there as well. So yeah, maybe you want to kind of start us back with little Josh. Who was Josh growing up, and kind of how did some of those early years maybe play a role in you getting into the industry, and then where did that kind of decision really start? Like so yeah, take us back to kind of the beginning with little Josh, and then throughout here we'll interject when needed. But I really want to make today about not story time with Josh, but I want to utilize your testimony and the things that you've gone through to provide value to our listeners. So yeah, what role does your upbringing play in you getting into the industry?
Yeah, I think it's really important for you to continue telling your story because when you share your story, you give someone else the opportunity to find healing. Because if you are someone who has been through anything, you have this gift, and the gift is life, and that blessing that you have, man. There's so many people who are going through or just starting a journey that you've been on in some capacity, and what I love about doing talks with this, because obviously, like, we have a pretty unique correlation in our lives, and this conversation will be authentic. So every single time I tell my story, regardless of it's been hundreds of times, each and every time it's unique in some capacity. And I would encourage everyone that has a story like that, even if it's in a personal setting, not, it doesn't have to be on podcast, on live. Man, there's people that are in your life that need to hear your story. So for me, looking back on it, it's just like every time I tell my story, I unpack something, and it's beneficial for me and for them. So if you ask me what impact did my upbringing have on me joining porn, um, 10 years ago, I'd have said none, because I didn't really see it. But backing way up, my mom had me when she was 16, and most people that I've talked to in the porn industry, they had a really gnarly childhood. Like, they, experienced some type of trauma or sexual abuse or drugs or something like that. And that's not my story. For me, I grew up in a really small town, and my mom had me when she was 16, and there was this. My father lived in that same town, and in not a malicious way whatsoever, just as a 16-year-old, he's like, I, I don't know, how to be a dad. I don't know how to be a father or anything like that. And so he just never was. And my mom is, very, very self-reliant, and we just lived at my grandma's. So I grew up at my grandmother's home, her home, so it's like my grandparents, my mom, her sister, and her two brothers, and that's where I grew up, eating fried chicken and buttermilk biscuits, almost every day. Buttermilk biscuits and cornbread every day, no matter what dinner was. But that's how
So
I
there,
grew up.
your grandfather was there, so there was a male role model in the home.
Yeah, so my grandfather was there, but I mean, he was retired. And when I say that my grandpa went fishing every day, he went fishing every single day. My grandmother and my grandfather, both passed away last year. My grandmother was dealing with cancer, and she was going through chemotherapy. She got COVID, and then my grandfather got it from her. So he was completely healthy for the most part, other than he had a few hernias from being a knucklehead, and he kept, trying to put his boat in by himself. But so she passed away, and then on a Wednesday, and he died on a Sunday. Just like really like tough, but um, yeah, like so many great memories with him. But it was all about fishing and how to talk to people. It's like what he taught me. But as far as like being a fatherly role, like he didn't really fill that gap. But my mom like gave me everything that I needed. But growing up, I did see the need for having a father, and I definitely felt the void of not having a father, in the capacity where I was very active in sports, and I found myself outside playing basketball by myself, playing baseball by myself, um, you know, playing quarterback with, there was a line of like really big like hedges that were my receivers. Like I would play by myself for hours and hours and hours on end, especially as my uncles got older, and they went to college, and had families and moved, and I'm just there with myself pretty much. And yeah, so that felt like, man, like I wish I had a dad. And then as I got older, I started to ask, why don't I have this relationship with my dad? And for me, I'm a high achiever, so for me, achievement equates to affirmation. And for me, I was trying to be affirmed, and I felt affirmed when I would achieve. And even though it was, a momentary, satisfaction, I believed that through achievement, I would feel loved, feel accepted, feel like I had worth. So I did that through scholastics. I did that through sports. I did that through, I started modeling when I was 14, 15. Had some success in that. And then like that was like the wave that I was riding. And then as I got older, it was through relationships. But again, like it was, can I, if I got the girl, if you know, if I got to do this, if I got to do that, if I got the job, if I got this, if I scored this many points, it always was, if I achieved the thing, I would feel for a moment, man, I'm worth something. I'm valuable. I feel good about myself. But it would slowly dissipate. And something that everyone needs to know, like when you try to cover up a need with something that doesn't really fill that need, when when that when that masking agent wears off, often that pain is amplified. So for me, it's like the desperation to feel wanted and to feel worthy or to feel valuable, when it would dissipate, it would really cause me to be like, man, like what do I need to do? And I can point it all back to not him not being there necessarily, but just like why wasn't this man, like why didn't he want to be my father? What was wrong with me?
So you took that like on yourself, like here's this man, like he's in the town, like it's not like he's on the other side of the world, like he's right there. I've heard you even say like you would see him in the grocery store. So it's like your young mind is like, why doesn't this guy approve of me or want me or need me in his life? Let me ask you, do you feel it was that that desire for needing the approval or feeling like you were needed, was that the fuel that maybe drove you to pursue the acting career? Like, okay, if my dad doesn't want me, here's an opportunity to get in front of maybe millions of people that will accept me. Was there anything there kind of happening consciously or unconsciously that was fueling your desire to get into entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure in some capacity, my desire to perform, because like that, like through performance, I would, I would get to portray, I don't know, I would get to use the skills that I had to achieve something, and those skills or those whatever it was, the byproduct of that was me feeling like, okay, I did something that was worth something. And I think, yeah, to a certain degree that, me thinking, this guy doesn't want to be my dad. Like, well, I need to prove myself. And I think what amplified that, it was never anything he did or didn't do necessarily. I think it was this plausible reality that I created in my mind. And what amplified it was seeing him, like they were well off. We were not. He was 16 when he had me, so obviously he met someone else. He got married. Had two kids. Those kids, had they had all this stuff. And like yes, they were more like financially equipped than we were as a family, but like my mom, like I never went without anything by any means. By any means. Like I always had J's on my feet and I went to basketball camp. Like I never ever went with anything. I had like my mom's amazing. But like for me, like seeing them like have this life is like, why am I not in that scenario? And I think like that amplified it. The fact that he had two other children that were living normal, healthy lives, and essentially like, man, like why don't I have these things? And it could have been anything, like anything that they had, like it could have been, a nicer vehicle or a smile on their face when I didn't, like anything. I was like, man, why don't I have that? And just like made me question myself more.
Wow, yeah, I couldn't even imagine, as a young child growing up, like having to, go through that and experience that. Um, let's speed up, the story here a little bit, and let's get out into, the Hollywood area, and kind of, what was the introduction? Like, I can't imagine, with growing up, like this, high achieving kid, like athletics, like you weren't writing on your high school, questionnaires, like, my goal in life is to be a porn star. I don't even know if that, I can tell for, and maybe I'm going to get a little vulnerable here, obviously as somebody that consumed a large amount of pornography, in my life. There were points throughout there, throughout my, probably mid to late 20s, when maybe some things were kind of, I hit rock bottom a few different times. I mean, that's just been my story. But there were points where it's like the thought occurred, like, yeah, that is a viable, option for me. To go, and it's definitely something that I never say I really pursued it, but it was something I probably, thought heavily and entertained the thought, because it seemed, as somebody that is enjoying consuming it, it's like, if I could be on the production side and just have unlimited sex, like, yeah, that sounds like the most amazing thing into the world. Like, obviously in my head, that's what I was thinking way back then. So, what was it for you, that got you into the industry?
Yeah, so I I I made it to the point where I was a sophomore in college. After several years, more than 2 years, and I partied a lot. I got in a DUI. Um, you know, just an absolute maniac. But in the process of that, I was still modeling, still acting. Acting was my passion. Theater was my major at the time. Like that's what I wanted to do. So, as someone who was 6'2", 220, and I had brown hazel eyes, brown hair, and looked like most people, it's like if someone looks like me and has a similar like reel or resume than me, and they're in a closer proximity, they're probably going to get the job. So for me, I thought if I put myself in a closer proximity to the things that I want to do, the obvious proxy of that will be me having a lot of success. So I dropped out of school like an idiot. I thought it was a good idea. I still remember this car, but I had a Jeep Cherokee that I paid cash for. And like for me, that was a big deal. That was a big deal for me. So I paid cash for this Jeep Cherokee and freaking loved it. And I sold it because I was like, "Oh, I won't need a car in LA," because I've been to New York a ton, in Miami, and it's like it's useful to have a car, but you don't need one. Little did I know, being in Los Angeles, it's a terrible idea not to have a vehicle. But I sold my Jeep Cherokee and moved to to Hollywood, and I didn't even have a place to stay. And I'm very resourceful, and I'm willing to just put myself out there. So I stayed in a hotel until I found the stuff that I needed to find. But I had an agency, and I started doing well, and I couch surfed on places, and you know hooked up with girls, and like would stay there, just like just absolute idiot. And I finally ended up like my money started to dissipate, and I was like, I need to do something. And I'd made a buddy there that I kind of knew, and he was like, hey, there's this restaurant that I work at. I make really good money. If you wanted to do something, just kind of you know like most people do when they live in Hollywood. It's like, yes, you are this, you are, pursuing this, but to
Yeah.
make ends meet, you need a job to
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of,
90% of the waiters and servers and bartenders in
yeah,
Hollywood and LA are aspiring actors, or,
yeah,
or whatnot.
absolutely,
Yeah. So
absolutely. And then like, unless you're killing it, the money is pretty like sporadic, especially in modeling, because it's super seasonal, unless like you are in the top 5%. But but yeah, I mean, I had an agent and I was working, but like again, like absolute moron. Like that would if I would like did a few like runway shows and would make 20 grand, I would spend 25. I was like absolute moron. But I started working at this steakhouse that my buddy, his name's Khalil, and he hooked me up with this job. And it's in the middle of West Hollywood, mechanical bull in the middle of the restaurant. It's called Saddle Ranch. It's in West Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. Just like this place, like you don't it's one of the bars in Hollywood that you don't have to be 21 to get into. So it's like, it is a madhouse 24/7. And I'm working there, and there's this group of girls, and they're sitting at this table, and for me as a, seeing four attractive women, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, put the charm on, I'm gonna get a good tip, maybe I'll get their number, whatever. um and I go to talk to them, and they're like, "Man, have you ever considered acting?" I was like, "This is awesome because they probably know someone because like that's how my mind works. It's like I'm all about relationships. It's like, gosh, they know a director or maybe they're working on a project and they can get me an introduction because at the end of the day, it's like it's great to have representation, but really like who you know and who you know or who you know and who they know, like that is your segue into so many things in that genre. But I thought I was like, great that you're going to introduce me to someone, and they're like, you know, are have you ever thought about acting? I was like, absolutely, blah 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 blah. And they're like, no, we're talking about adult films, and like again, absolute moron. I was like, I, I'm I'm 22. Like what? I mean, what do you? I'm old. I'm an adult. Like, what do you mean? They're like, no, we're talking about porn. I was like, what? I've seen it, and like in that moment, it was almost like Superman was sitting at a table. And what I mean by that was pornography was never real to me. Like I had seen it, like I'd watched it like on the computer, and I've seen magazines and stuff like that, but like not like a huge consumer of it. But I was like, this is a real thing. So what are you asking me? Like, what do you mean? Like, have I thought about doing it? They're like, well, we all do it, and we would love to introduce you to our agent. I was like, an agent? Okay, sure, yeah. And like really, like I said yes to it, but I never really intended on following through with it. Even if I met like the guy or whatever, I was really just trying to like hang out with the girls, and they weren't even there. And they just said, "Hey, meet this guy at this place, this whatever." And I was thinking I was going to go to like this sketchy hotel, and this guy was going to be sitting on the edge of the bed, picking lint out of his belly button, and I was going to get into a fist fight. Like that's what I was prepared for. And I get to this place in Studio City that's adjacent from Universal Studios, and it's this giant complex. And I walk into this private garage, and there's like all these cars that I've only seen in magazines in this garage. And I go up this elevator, and then I walk down this hallway, and there's these like plaques of all these like famous like porn stars on the wall. And then I walk into this office, and there's this like gigantic desk, and there's this guy sitting on the other side of it in a three-piece suit with a double Windsor tie. He's got an English accent, and he asked me a few questions, and he really spoke to every insecurity that I had. He just asked me, why did I move out there? Where am I from? What are my goals? And what do I want to do with my life? And he's like, I can make you famous. You want to act. The porn industry is actually transitioning into this production where we are parodying all these movies. And man, with acting experience, and there's not a ton of good looking guys, like if you can do it, you will be a star. You will make all this money, and you'll be a famous actor. And again, I'm like, that sounds great. I'm not gonna do that. And then I don't like it's like one of those like boneheaded things, like, why would I say yes to this? But I said, to him, I was like, yeah. He's like, the way to work is you'll do one, kind of like an audition. If it goes well, I would love to offer you a contract. And I was like, whatever, didn't really think much about it. And as I left, I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. And then I get this phone call like soon after that. He's like, "Hey, so we need to send you to this standardized testing facility, and they'll pull a urine and a blood sample, and we do all the testing at the same place so that we can control like as many variables as possible, so that we have a consistent piece of data." And I was like, "Sure, like sounds great." It's like I've been very promiscuous my entire life, and I've never been tested. It's like probably a great idea. And I go, and the test doesn't come back the next day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do I have something? What's going on? Why isn't this test back? But then I kind of like get this feeling in my gut. It's like, man, this is an opportunity not to do this. I probably should do this. And then the next day comes, and he's like, hey, we still want you to come. Are you still good to do the scene? And I was like, I guess. And then I go. And again, like the whole time I'm like, I'm not gonna do this. I shouldn't do this. I'm still gonna do it. And I don't remember the thought process of why I was justifying it, but just like there was this the whole time, okay, I'm gonna do this anyway. And then I go to the studio, and again, I get there and I'm expecting one thing. I'm expecting to get a camcorder, and it's like, here, go in this room with this girl. And I get there, and there's catering and assistants, and there's camera A, camera B. There's someone like going around like with BTS. There's legit lighting. There's all this stuff going on. There's an AD on set. It's just like there's art director and catering. What's going on? Like, this is legit. And then it's almost like when you believe that you've gone too far and you can't go back. Like, that is where I was. And then
Did you feel trapped at that point, like you were in it? There's no getting out. I want to zoom in here if possible, because I think there's something really valuable that we can extract. Not everybody's going to deal with this same exact scenario. Having to make the decision of if I want to pursue getting into pornography. But I think battling that cognitive dissonance, like what I'm doing doesn't align with actually what I'm thinking. So if you could have, maybe gone back, now that you're out, it's 10 years later, you're obviously, we haven't gotten to the rest of the story, which we will get to. But if you could have gone back to, speaking to Joshua at that time with your knowledge now, with your experience and everything you said, and maybe there's something that we could share with somebody that is maybe battling, not, like I said, not the same exact thing, but is battling cognitive dissonance. Like, what I'm doing doesn't align with the values of my life, or doesn't align with who I believe myself to be. What would you have said to Joshua then, or what would you say to somebody right now that's kind of having that feeling of, maybe I've already gone this far in, so I'm trapped, but I know it's not the right thing for me to
yeah,
be doing?
it's never too late to start moving in a different direction. It's never too late to turn around and start moving in a different direction. And like for me, like that's my story in that moment, but that was my story for 6 years. You are not your worst decision, and you are not your greatest accomplishment. And when you start to define yourself by what you do, that becomes who you are. That's not who you are. And like you were talking about, when there's a foundational why behind everything that you do, you won't allow your circumstance to dictate what you do. It's the difference between reactionary behavior versus responsive behavior. Reactionary behavior, my circumstance and a person in a situation is going to control how I act. Responsive behavior is, there is something inside of me that is bigger than the situation, and I'm going to respond indicative of who I am, regardless of the situation, what the person does, what the person says, whatever I encounter. I'm not going to allow that thing to dictate my response. And like in that moment, I did not have that. And I was just pursuing something that I didn't understand. And I was trying to figure out life. And man, momentary satisfaction is not worth a lifetime of regret.
I love that. So what I heard you say is every person, men, specifically, we addressed this a couple episodes back with Johnny L. Sasser. It's like, you need, whether it's a core set of values that you drive your life by, or a belief system or worldview, or just a why statement or a purpose statement for your life, and that needs to kind of sit at the foundation of every
Yeah.
decision
Yeah. I mean,
that you
every
make.
person needs a vision for their life.
Mm,
And your vision for your life, what you want to do with your life, like everyone should have that. Like, what do you want to do with your life? And if something does not align with that mission and vision, and it's actually eroding it or setting you on a different path, why would you say yes to it? So for me, like, that decision literally imploded everything that I had pursued up to that moment. So I said yes in that moment when I should have said no. And I knew from my mother raising me and loving me to teaching me to do the right thing. I knew that was the wrong thing. I knew that was wrong, but I did it anyway because I was chasing the satisfaction of becoming famous. It was not like, for me, it was never about the sex, because like I had no problems getting women. And it wasn't even about like the money. Like it. I didn't need money. Like I wasn't rich by any means, but I didn't need money, and I had no problem like hooking up with girls. So like that wasn't what I was chasing after. I was chasing after the idea of what it would be like to be famous, and that is what drove me to say yes. But ultimately, I needed something that I couldn't put my hands on to make me feel in a way that I could never achieve on my own. Like I was chasing after, if I become famous, I will feel valuable. If I become famous, I will feel loved. If I become famous, finally I will have this peace that I'm chasing after. And like that is why I said yes. So in that moment, this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, we need you in 15 minutes. Here's a Viagra. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't, don't. If you've never taken it before, buy it in half." And I was like, I'm already here. What am I going to do? So I popped the whole thing, drank a water bottle, and went over to this like day bed that had stadium lighting, and there was this girl that never looked at me. We never spoke a word to each other. I walked over. It happened. I don't even recall it. But then I'm driving home, and I'm trying to. I took like a pretty mediocre shower before I left, and I still had like lube or whatever like still on my leg. I remember like I could like it was almost like I felt dirty and I couldn't get it off. And I had this check in my hand. I'm driving home and it's like, what did I do? But that decision within weeks had me fired from the agency, the mainstream agency that I had been so desperately trying to get in with my since I was a kid. So that dream gone. All of a sudden, my mom's like, "Hey, your uncle told me that someone said this. Is this true?"
So the first movie, the first film, like cost you your acting career and got back to family that quickly.
Yeah, because like for me, so A, I'm from a really small town, and B, the story that I have that's slightly different than everyone else, because of the agent that I had, like his plan for me was never to, just we got this guy, and we're going to, he's just another guy, so we're just gonna like plug him in and try to make some money off of him. Like his plan was to make me as famous as he could, because he saw that in me. And so I never did anything but big projects and worked for big companies. So the company that I worked for first, it was one of those companies that would like that video was viewed 500,000 times within me doing it 6 days later. So it's like it was everywhere, and someone it only took one person to see it to tell someone else. Then all of a sudden I'm on my phone with my mom. It's like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's like, yeah, I did it, and in that moment, um, I felt so ashamed and humiliated, and I felt her disappointment. And she never stopped loving me, never stopped pursuing me, but never affirmed that I was doing that. No matter how much money I made, no matter how much fame that I had, she never was like, "Oh, that's cool." She would always say, "You are so much better than that. Your life, it has greatness all over it, and it's not doing that. Your life is worth so much more than that. I wish you would do something else."
Was there a point, right then and there that maybe you thought, packing up and returning home?
Yeah. I mean, for me, because like that decision had so many consequences, because I was kind of seeing a girl, and I told her, and she told me to take a hike, and she happened to work at that restaurant. So I felt like, okay, and she was really well respected. She was actually doing really well. Like she was a dancer, like professional dancer, like in music videos and stuff like that, and like having like, pretty good career. And just everyone loved her, everyone respected her. So like I had betrayed this person that everyone, you know, cared about. So it's like I felt humiliated, and all of a sudden, like my circle of friends for the most part was gone, and I felt humiliated and shamed. So I quit that job. So I was like, What else am I going to do? My agent just fired me. Um, this girl that I was seeing just told me to take a hike. I can't go back to that job. Like a few of the people that work there still like, "Oh, that's so cool," but like at the end of the day, like those people who were my friends that were her friends, they didn't think it was very cool. They thought that I betrayed someone, and I was, like, that's disgusting. So for me, it was like, well, I either run or lie in the bed that I made. And I was just like, well, just who I am as a person, for good or for bad, everything I got. And that, like, regardless of what it is, if I am mopping a floor, or if I am, you know, starting a business, a gym, if I'm doing a workout, if I'm eating chicken wings, or if I'm doing porn, or if I'm, you know, whatever I'm doing, like everything I got. That's just who I am. Everything I got. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And
Yeah. So 90% of your life, gets taken away from you in a moment's decision. And then I have to imagine, the minute that you turned and looked at the porn industry, they were standing there like this, like arms wide open, welcoming you back in. So, you know, what where do we go, where do we go from here? Because I know, you kind of, once you were in, it's like you catapulted to success. So, you know, what's that like, where you kind of return back? I mean, this moment of like, I don't have anything left, so this is all that I have, so I'm going to give everything. I'm going to become, did you tell yourself like, I'm going to become the best porn star in the world, I'm going to become the most famous globally? Like,
yeah, I mean, I was
was
like,
there a point where that's where that kind of became the aim? Now is like, if this
yeah,
is
the
all that I
goal,
got, I'm going to become the best at it.
yeah, the goal is like to start my own company, to be a director, to win Performer of the Year, um, to make $1 million, and I did all those things. I made over $1 million. I won Performer of the Year. I directed a year for a very large company. I started my own production company. I did all those things. Um, but yeah, so I said yes, and that was like early summer, and even just between the early summer and then the end of that year, I did, I think, 150 movies in just that first year. And then all of a sudden, I was nominated for like best, like, newcomer or whatever. And I'm at this award show, and like all of a sudden, like, I'm getting like all this press, and I'm getting people offer me like, you know like, I don't know if you remember, but they used to be like these really sketchy like movies on like late night, like Cinemax and Showtime. It was like
You catch
Skinemax.
you catch the
But like,
fuzziness. You get a scene every 30 seconds in between the fuzziness. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it's like, like these, like for me, like I like doing those for several reasons. A, it wasn't porn, like the sex wasn't real. And B, like I traveled all over the world making those movies. Like I went to like Romania, I went to Paris, I went to London, I went to Costa Rica, I went to Mexico. Like we shot these films in like incredible places. And to be honest, it didn't pay nearly as well as porn did. But for me, it was like, man, this is cool because I'm getting to do something that I wanted to do, and more often than not, I was the lead. And but what killed me though is, they were using my fame from my adult film career. So I was like, can I go by my name? They're like, no, 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 we need to use your porn name. So like that was like, man. And it's like that was just one of many things
It's
where it's
like
like,
you were chasing this acceptance, like this little boy. We touched on that a little bit. Like, I wanted to feel accepted, I wanted to feel needed, and here you are now, globally accepted, but not even Joshua. It's like the character that you've been told to create. So I gotta imagine like that didn't even satisfy that need.
I'm just saying, like, just like, I don't want to make light of it, but like, to quote one of my favorite movies, like I was a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. like like Tropic Thunder, but I was a person who was portraying someone else, who was always portraying someone else in a movie. And even deeper, I was portraying an intimate act that it looked real, but it was far from an act of intimacy. So far from even a normal like human interaction. So disconnected. So different.
Talk to that, because you mentioned it in the first scene. You kind of, you're kind of in one room, get prepped up 15 minutes before the guy comes. You pop the blue pill, then you walk into this other room, daybed, girl sitting there. You guys don't even kind of exchange interaction. There's no talking. talk to, if you can, the male female dynamic, because here we are, on the not we, but people on the consuming side. It's like they're looking at this. It's like, oh, this is intimacy. Like this is real passion and love, and you being in industry, like that's definitely not the case. So talk to the dynamic, the male female, and what it did, shaping your view and perspective of sex, not just in the industry, but then in your own personal life. Like, how did it warp, your views and even the ability to be intimate in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like if you worked at, I love donuts, but like if I worked at Krispy Kreme, I probably would be, kind of, nah, I'm good, and that's kind of how it was. But I think for me, like when you're on set, I mean, there's a director telling you what to do, like to transition, to open up the camera. There's a boom mic, like within inches from your face and everything else. And there's lighting, there's positioning, there's someone like quarterbacking you through the entire thing. There's people talking to you, there's cuts, there's editing. More often than not, like someone on set doesn't want to be there. Like more often than not, like the girl, or in you, where it's like it's never like you even like actual attraction to the other person. It's pretty rare because like if you see a supermodel, like a photograph of them, it's like, wow, that person's like incredible. And then you see them in person, like, oh, that person looks pretty different. Like still like gorgeous, but it's like that's not, something's different, right? So it's like I think the biggest misconception is that there's a genuine connection between the two people doing that scene, and that was never the case. Like you were there to do a job. And for me, and for guys in that industry, there's this. So there's a director that is footing the bill for the talent, for the location, for the permits, for the sound, for the crew, for the catering, for everything. And the only person that is not guaranteed to get paid is the guy. Because if the guy doesn't do his job, there's no product. But everyone else has done their part, so everyone gets paid but you. So directors will not like, it is incredibly difficult for guys to get in the industry to the extent that I was, because a director that's like a day is costing him 50 grand. There's no chance that I'm going to hire you on a whim and lose 50 grand. So directors, like this is like the weirdest thing for me, and I think it's really good for people to hear. So guys in the industry, there would be like 20, 25 people that would consistently work. And that's because if a director trusted you, they would hire you every time, because the guy for the most part is disposable. Like it really doesn't matter for the guy. Like porn, it showcases the girl, it's all about the girl. So the guy, is, if a director trusts a guy, he's gonna hire him time and time and time again. The issue is, you as a guy, more often than not, you're not going to date or see anyone outside of the industry. You're probably going to date someone in the industry, because who are you going to have a relationship with? So you end up dating someone in the industry, and you are on set for 10, 15 hours sometimes with these guys. So like who's going to sit there in silence and twiddle their thumbs and not talk to each other? So you are at minimum like situational friends with these guys, work associates at least. Some of the guys you hang out with and work out with sometimes. So you know these guys well for years, and then you start dating this girl, and then you are sitting at dinner with your significant other that you're in a monogamous relationship with outside of work, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But you're in this monogamous relationship with this person, and you're sitting at dinner with someone else, and more often than not, your friends also in the industry. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting at this dinner table with this other couple that I had worked with his significant other, and he had worked with my significant other in that week, and we are pretending like no big deal.
nothing happened. You guys just clocked in, clocked out.
Yeah. And for me,
Wow.
man, for me as a Southern boy with a young mom, like I used to throw like metal cans at guys trying to talk to my mom. Like grew up like this like jealous kid trying to protect my mom from the world. So like I took that mindset with me, like in relationships, even though I did not treat, you know, my significant others well for most of my life. Like I was not reliable, relationships would end, whatever. But I was jealous. I was super jealous. So to pretend that didn't bother me, man, so unhealthy. And then the person that I was dating at the time, she became very like she was very famous, very, very famous. And she wanted to talk about this. Like she thought it was exciting. So she wanted to talk about interactions. And for me, it just like it was just a step by step process of me just allowing things in my life that I knew that I didn't want, but it's like, well, I've already went this far, might as well, might as well, might as well. So I was like, whatever, and I allowed that conversation in our relationship, and man, like that was the thing that very quickly, like, was so destructive for my mental health. Like it was already getting bad because just pretending to be someone all the time and doing this, like doing what I did, it took an impact on me because there's shame and there's guilt and there's just like, I mean, so many layers to it. But for me, like allowing that into my life, like that's when I started having like thoughts of self harm, where it's like, what have I done? There's nothing I can do. There's nowhere to go.
So where did that breaking point come for you? Was it a like just a conversation you had with yourself one day? Was it you woke up and you just had this kind of revelation of this is not any longer the direction, like how if you're that deep in it and you got nothing else at this point, you feel like everything else in your life is gone and this is all you have, but you're still battling this cognitive dissonance of like, I know this isn't right, but I'm so far deep. How at that point were you able to get out of it? And then obviously everything that's happened in your life since then, I want to touch on a little bit, and how certain things that you gotten involved in, and decisions that you made and things that you developed in your life. So yeah, what was it for you that got you out of the industry if you're at that point so deep in it?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like a bizarre 6 months. So it went from me finally. So I had been nominated for Performer of the Year 3 times. I finally won it. I won the award that I had been striving after my entire time in the career. After 6 years, I won the Performer of the Year, and they call my name on stage. They call it again. They call it again. I'm not there. I'm at home on my face, crying my eyes out, asking the God that I didn't really know if I could die because that's how depressed I was at. And I was like, I cannot keep doing this. I want to die. And something in my mind told me, so I had been receiving offers to do like Playgirl, and I shot for Playgirl a few times, but like I had these offers to do like gay porn. Like we'll give you, name your price, $1 billion, like whatever. Like just name your what just tell us. And I was like, okay, this is just who I am. There's nothing I can do. And there was this like decision where it's like, man, if I could make what I was making in a year, only working 3 times a month, like maybe I could do that. It couldn't be that bad because I mean, I work with people that I would never have sex with, like all the time. So it's just like, and I was using like all kinds of like ED stuff, erectile dysfunction medication, like all the. So it's just like, how bad could it be? Because for me, I was to a point where sex was so monotonous that like shaking someone's hand and looking them in the eye, super uncomfortable. But sex, whatever, like could care less who it was with, who, what, when, and where, completely irrelevant to me. So I was like, okay, I'll sign this contract because A, it will force me out of that industry because there's this like taboo thing like with like gay porn and straight porn where I won't be able to go back to that. So that's like I'll have to be out of that. But at the same time, there's nothing else I can do because I'm a prostitute and I sell myself for sex. So that's all I'm good for. But if I can only work 3 times a month, maybe that won't be as bad on my mental health. So I said yes to that. So I accepted, it was very high 6 figures for a 6 month contract to do that. And it was so much worse than I thought. And I had to use the stuff called Caverjack where I was like injecting myself so that I could do these scenes. And it didn't even work half the time. And
Injecting yourself in the penis,
yeah, so there's stuff
correct?
called Caverjack. So it's for paralysis patients who want to be able to be intimate with their significant other. And I'm using that, and I'm using it to the point where like I'm essentially like immune to it because I'm using it. Um, so I'm using that, and just like I believe that that would, for some reason, I believed that like that wouldn't be that big of a deal, and nothing changed, and it just escalated. Like me, it's like okay, now I'm thinking about like, well, how am I going to do it? It's like how am I going to take my life? Like that's where I was. And then the next day, I walk into a bank and I had this check, and on the memos of the check, it clearly says what it's for. Like there's no hiding what it's for. So I would always just try to drop it in a Dropbox or ATM or whatever. But that day, I couldn't do that. I had to take it to the cashier. And like for me, there's this thing I can't stand having like an uncashed check or cash anywhere. It's like I unless I'm on vacation and there's cash in my pocket and I need it because I know I need it. But anyway, I was like, I got to get this check out of my hand, and I go and deposit it. I have this interaction with the cashier that I didn't want to have, and then after the transaction is over, I pivot to walk away, and she said, "Joshua, are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you?" And that was the first time I had heard my name in a year, and it
Because everybody else
absolutely
only knows you as the industry.
because I'd isolate like at that point I'd isolate myself. I'd stop returning my mom's phone calls. I wasn't texting her, calling her, my family, my friends, anyone that I had an authentic relationship that knew me as Joshua Broome. I was not talking to. In that moment, she said my name, and it absolutely destroyed this reality that I had created. And I went home and I looked myself in the mirror, and I had no freaking clue who I was looking at, and I felt the weight of disappointing my mom. I felt the weight of her being married to someone who abused her and was on drugs, and that it emotionally hurt my brother, um, and and then just like her like overcoming all those things, and then her finally meeting someone who treated her well. I missed the wedding, and then within a year his pancreas ruptured and he died, and I wasn't there. I wasn't there for my mom that had sacrificed everything for me, and I wasn't there because I was so stupid and selfish that I couldn't see past that my mom just wanted me because she loved me. She could care less what I was doing. But the way that I saw myself is like I can't be a son, I can't be a brother, I can't be a friend, that I'm absolutely useless. Like in that moment, I just felt how I had impacted her, and it wrecked me. It absolutely wrecked me, and I ran for my life. I picked up the phone. I called my agent. I called the company. I put out a I called my PR guy. I put out my press release, and I ran. I ran for my life. And the story goes is I left that industry, but I
Was all
continued
the
to
was
run.
all the bank teller said, I'm sorry, I just is all she said was your name, Joshua, can I help you? And that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I got the chills, and I just bolted because like I had the receipt in my hand, the transaction was over, and like it was eerie to me because there was no reason for her to say that because if it was the beginning of the conversation, I probably wouldn't even have thought much about it because
Yeah,
it was just
of course you need your help. That's why I'm here. I'm here for you to help me. But once you've
right.
done the thing that I came here for you, it's like, what do you
Yeah,
mean?
right.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think like that for me, like that's something I'm really passionate about. It's like intentional interaction with people and offering encouragement because you never know what your simple act of kindness, your simple act of encouragement, or your simple act of intentionality. You have no idea the impact it's going to have on another person. and that literally saved my life.
Yeah, I'll tell you one piece in a very huge fundamental piece of our curriculum here is in the second month. Once we kind of do lay some of the groundwork on ourselves, we have to rewire how we look at other people. And 1 week's assignment is simply one morning. I need you to send a couple just heartfelt text messages somebody you haven't spoken to in a while. And then there's some other stuff, like random acts of kindness. But it's so true. I say this all the time. Like, you never know what even a smile to a cashier or how is your day going, thank you, what that can do for somebody, because you don't know what they're going through. So especially as believers, I believe, and this is something that has been fundamental in my life as a Christian, which I'm an infant. It's only been a couple years since I was saved, but I believe, yeah, we're called to disciple, we're called to share the gospel. We're called, for all of that. But I think the greatest impact that we can have on people to bring them to Christ is by showing up differently in the world. So differently that when you leave the situation, that person asks why. Why is that person a little bit different? But yeah, there's true power in just an interaction exchange with somebody that you'll never even see again.
My life was changed by three people's interaction with me, and not anything they did, but how they responded. But it. I I I am very long winded, and I apologize for dragging out my story for so long. But I mean, to really encapsulate everything, it's like I left the industry. I had been I won Performer of the Year. Decided like what didn't show up, didn't capitalize on the momentum that I'd wanted, because if you win Performer of the Year as a guy, you pretty much can charge whatever you want. You're an independent contractor and you choose how much you make per scene. If you're obviously working with your agent, but for me, I could have been making you know like high 300K a year, and I leave and I decide to do gay porn as a straight person, never having any kind of same sex attraction in my life. I just, hey, that I can make what I make in a year and 6 months, doing it 3 times a month in contrast to 2025. It made sense to me because I don't know why.
Yeah, no. I think I think the way we told the story here was the proper way. So I'm not too concerned with the length of time or how it's drawn out. I think where we go from here is people leave the industry every day. Maybe not every day, but there's people that are
Yeah,
walking away from the industry. So
but
how do
no,
we?
they do leave the industry every day. So I think like this is something that is so misconstrued and so misunderstood. So every single day, because for me, like, yes, I did 1,000 scenes in a 6-year span. For me, so that's an anomaly. That's not normal. So that's me having tremendous success and like being able to perform at a high level. And but girls in the industry more often than not will do 5 to 10 scenes, never be in the industry again, but that experience impact them for the rest of their life. Because again, like what I was talking about, like, yes, like you showcase the girl, but the longevity of a girl's career more often than not is like 6 months. Like there's no like stars anymore because of the mass consumption and the tube sites. So it's just like more and more and more and more and more new,
Yeah,
new, new, new,
they
new.
run them through this. They run them through the stringer. Hot Girls Wanted, the Rakisha, I think it's Rashida Jones documentary. Hot Girls Wanted really does a great job of portraying that side of things, because they fish these young girls in. They give them the small little taste, 1, 2, 3 scenes, and then you're either done or we're going to take you to the hardcore stuff, which is what is really fueling a lot of the industry. But so how do we, so what gets us to where, because like you said, people are leaving every single day. So what was it that, is it because you were at the top and you almost feel an obligation, to become an advocate, to become a voice? Like, how do we go from leaving to where now it's like the mission is to eradicate the production of it? Because that's not everybody. Most people, they leave it completely and they're like, I just want to get away from that as much as I possibly can, not even remind myself of my past.
Yeah, I think because of the level of success I had, I have a responsibility and an opportunity. Because if something nearly destroyed you, I think you have a responsibility to warn people to not go in that direction. It's like if you've ever driven past someone that a cop is, parked out and they'll flash their lights at you. They're like, watch out. Um, that's what I want to do. You don't want to go down that road because I've been at the pinnacle of success. I've been as successful as someone could be. At the end of the day, I made the money, I had the fame, I won the awards, I got all the girls, and you know what? At the end of the day, when I had the thing that I thought would make me happy, when I finally caught the rabbit I was chasing, what I realized is that thing didn't make me happy. It didn't bring the fulfillment that I thought it would. And that is what crushed me. Because I believed if I achieved this pinnacle of success, it would make me feel a certain way. And it actually revealed that obviously there was something deeper that I was searching for that I couldn't obtain on my own. So I leave the industry and I lied to everyone I met. And luckily, I had some background in strength conditioning, being a collegiate athlete for a very short period of time, and just loving fitness, loving training, loving bodybuilding, like loving all this stuff. So I just dabbled in it. I got a few certifications here and there, and started. I walked into this CrossFit gym, and like I got a taste of like what it was like to be in a different atmosphere because I was just a guy who was training with these people, you know, hurting at the end of this workout just like anybody else. And there was just something beautiful about that. It's like it didn't matter who you were; it mattered. Did you exhibit integrity and work ethic? Great, high five. End of story. Did you work hard? Great, that's what we're here for. You know, and for me, it was like that was a glimpse into like I want that, and it's like CrossFit, like especially 10 years ago, get a certification. You're a coach. Bada boom. But that's what I did. So I was
You
like,
got
I
ten
got
thousand dollars, you can open up a box.
yeah, yeah. Like literally, you pay $1,000, and all of a sudden you can own a gym. But so my life is just a series of people giving me opportunities and God putting mentors in my life. But so I left, and that was literally like I had some experience in the restaurant business, but I had modeled and acted. It's like I'm not going to go into that film. I'm not going to go in that realm because I don't want to be used in that way. Even though I don't look at it in that construct now. But I was like, I don't want to be photographed or filmed doing anything. I want no part of that. So I was like, what can I do? And I was like, well, I love fitness. So maybe I can get a job at a gym. And just because of where I was from, because CrossFit in California, it just had this like, it just had this appeal to it. So I got a job at a gym in Raleigh and I started working there. And then I lied to everyone I met. And I ran from like, why were you in California? Well, I, you know, I tried to do some stuff. It didn't work out, whatever, no big deal. But it's like, the reality was, even in that point, because the way porn works, I like what they were looking at was someone who was still very famous in that industry. Like, what are you doing here? Aren't you that guy? Aren't you that guy? Aren't you that guy? Aren't you that guy? And everywhere I went, and I couldn't run from it. And like the gym that I was working at, like very easily could have fired me, but they didn't. And they said something that was really interesting to me. They were like, "Well, I understand that all those things are true about you, but the person I see sitting in front of me, I believe that you want to be bigger. Like you want to change. You like your life is bigger than the series of those. What I'm hearing you say mistakes." So it's like we want to give you an opportunity. We're going to set some boundaries, and we want to give you an opportunity to try to grow. And I worked my butt off. I cleaned parking lots, I cleaned bathrooms, I worked at a grocery store, and I worked at that gym. And I did that for a while, and I worked my way up. And another gym down the street, they lost a full-time head coach, and I had the opportunity to step into that, and I had obtained enough hours and enough reps to really know what I was doing, and I started like really like leaning into like how to get better at this and just obtaining knowledge and certifications and doing all this stuff and became really successful in that capacity. I went to this other gym, and I was able to not work at the grocery store anymore. Um, and I met this girl, and I was like, "Hey, uh, I'll put your equipment away after this workout." And she was like, "Get out of here! I can put my own stuff away." I was like, "Wow," because I mean, for the most part, I was used to whatever I said to a girl like went well, and I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Get out of here." I was like, "Gosh, I'm in love. I'm in love."
It's
But then I was like, "Hey, can we go out on a date?" And she was like, "No, but we can go on a run." I was like, "I hate running. I love sprinting. I hate running, but absolutely yes, we can go for a run." And we decided to meet up to go for a run. And I was sitting there in the car waiting for her to get there to run, and I just had this like lump in my throat where I like this person. I don't want to hurt this person because I had hurt so many people. Because often we tell ourselves the lie that, well, if I don't tell this person something they don't like, they don't need to know this because this is going to hurt them. The reality is, you don't want to deal with the consequences. Like, that's why, more often than not, the people that I will work with one on one, like, absolutely, there's a time and a space to tell your significant other or your spouse, like, you are struggling with an addiction to pornography, but more often than not, you don't want to tell that person, and you lie to yourself and you justify it because I don't want to hurt them. And the reality is, you don't want to deal with the consequence. So for me, I was like, man, my willingness to deal with the consequence of her probably rejecting me was superseded by me seeing this person is amazing and I don't want to hurt them. So I was like, I got to tell them the truth. So I was like, hey, I want to tell you something before we get much further. I did a little bit of porn. She was like, "Say what?" I was like, and then it was like ripping off the band-aid. I'm like, I told her everything. I mean, I was like, I kicked my brother in the shin when he was 12, and I meant to do it. Like I told her everything. And she's very introverted, processor. She teaches English as a second language. She's brilliant and incredible. But she was like, okay, well, I didn't expect that. But just can I ask you a few questions? She's like, well, do you believe in God? I was like, yeah. I mean, I grew up. My grandparents were believers, and I grew up like going to like vacation Bible school and stuff like that. So I mean, I believe in God. Yeah, I believe that God exists and He made me and made everything. She's like, okay, well, do you have a relationship with God? Like, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Like, do you pray? I'm like, what? What do you mean? Do I have a relationship? I was like, yeah, yeah. I said I believe in God, but what do you mean? She was like, well, do you have a relationship with God? I was like, I don't know the answer to that. I was like, and for me, like, I want to know the ins and outs of everything. Like, I just have this, very skeptical, like curious mind where it's like, if I don't know the answer to something, I really want to know. But I was like, I did not know the answer to that. I was like, and more often than not, if something's not a definitive yes, it's a clear no. So I I was like, I don't know. And then she didn't like change the subject, but she was just like asking me about my mom, asking me about how I grew up, this and that. And then as our conversation, as our walk that was really long, as it concluded, she was like, hey, I didn't expect to hear those things that you said, because it's hard for me to see you do those things because the person that I see standing in front of me like really cares about people, and you're really great at what you do, and I just have a hard time seeing you do that. I just want you to know that, like, I'm not judging you because you did those things, because I know that is not who you are. And I was never able to see myself anyway other than I am my actions. And that was really heavy. So the way that she like ushered me into the presence of God, like through the way that she interacted with me, and even more so how she responded to me, it cultivated this sense of where it was okay to let down some boundaries, and also really cultivated some curiosity. And then, a few days later, she was like, "Hey, do you want to go to church with me?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Let's go." I want to know more. And I had heard the gospel before. I'd heard, I've definitely like been in many like church settings, like sitting there listening to sermons and things like that. But because of the way that she interacted me, and because of this curiosity that she had cultivated in me, I was listening in a different way, and I was open to hearing what the pastor had to say. And he presented the gospel, and it made the most sense of anything I've ever heard in my life. And I surrendered this shame and guilt that I'd been carrying not through my time in porn, but my entire life. And I surrendered my life to Jesus. And like that moment, like I was weeping because like, man, there was this burden that I was carrying my entire life, and this thing that I was trying to find, and all of a sudden I felt weightless, and I felt peace. And I felt a peace that I was searching for that I couldn't find through fame, through money, through relationships. It was found in the person of Jesus Christ. And hearing the fact that he loved me in spite of my actions, and saw me and was willing to die just so that I could be in a relationship with him, and that I was worth that. And not only that, that I was created by him, that my life has a plan and a purpose, and there's gifts that he gave me to carry out that purpose. So my life does have meaning. My life is bigger than what I saw it to be, and I am loved, and I'm not rejected. And the father that I was searching for, I actually had all along. I just didn't know him.
Wow, brother, thank you so much. So much of that, I mean, is very similar to the things that I've had to go through and experience in my story. Chasing bodybuilding was one of the things that I chased, and I thought it was going to provide me with certain things, and I thought that if the world saw me as the biggest, strongest, leanest, most muscular guy, that I would have been accepted. And I didn't reach the top, but I reached the pinnacle of what bodybuilding meant to me. And just like you, that night, that you talked about winning that award, the night that I got my national qualification, to be able to compete for an IFBB pro card, was one of the darkest, loneliest moments of my life. I had the best I ever looked. I mean, I was, fitness modeling, and I'd achieved something that I worked, at that point, 12 years for, like the peak of my physique. And it was nothing but just a shell that a shield that I built to protect myself from the world. And I, with everything else that I've had to go through and done, like nothing has brought me that sense of peace that you talked about, other than the day that I gave my life to Christ. And I think that's obviously an important part here. No matter what we can chase or what we want, none of it means anything if our heart is not in the right place, and we don't have that peace that can only be provided through the relationship with him. So one thing I want to ask you about, because and then obviously I want to respect time. We went a little bit over, but I appreciate you staying on here. Is the men that I work with, specifically in our coaching company, sometimes they get to this point where whatever it is they've consumed or done or watched, many times they feel like there's their family or their wives or their moms or whoever maybe not accept them. And you talk so so vividly about how you had those same thoughts, like nobody's going to accept me, but the minute like you return home, it's like you were welcomed in, and you were questioning like if this girl, but the minute you open up and really shared the real truth and real vulnerability. So can you maybe speak directly to that guy that's sitting there right now, and he's like he feels that the things that he's done, like he's gone too far down one side, and there's no being accepted by anybody, and we know that's not the case, because when people love you, they love you not because of what you're doing, but because of who you are inside. So is there any just words of call it encouragement or wisdom, or just something you can share with maybe a guy that's right now is questioning, like, are people like really, would they really accept me even though I've done X in my life?
Yeah. Um, so what I love about my story is that person that shared that, that interaction with me, that person that didn't reject me and invited me to church. That person has been my wife for 5 years, and we have, three children. And like for me, the moment that my first son was born, and I walked over to the table where this slimy, crying, gorgeous creation is just lying there, and there's like you can touch him, and I reached toward him, and he grabbed my finger. I lost my mind. I was crying, but for me, in that moment, I had a small glimpse of how much God loves me and how God sees me. And I was like, man, I want everyone to know that feeling. Not necessarily being a father. I want everyone to know when God sees them, they don't see but he doesn't see your behavior. He sees a son and a daughter that he loves so much that he was willing to sacrifice everything.
He chose to create you.
Yeah,
He chose to make you.
yeah. So it's like, man, it's so for you to more often than not, like your belief that you will not be accepted by anyone, that's not something that you need to deal with in a sense where you need to find the right people. It starts here. Until you understand that you are worth something, until you understand that you are deserving of love, you can never accept it. And you allow your past experiences, your failures, your losses, things that you've done, things that people have done to you, you allow all of those things to mold how you see yourself. And that is the issue. You need to change the way that you see yourself. That and for me, I'm a preacher, so it's like for me, it's like I go back to scripture. So for me, there's a verse in digging into the text, right? So context is important when we read the Bible. So there, we have the Bible, and it was written, a very long time ago. But when you read a book, there's an author, and then there's an audience, and there's the context of that book. You take the book of Ephesians. So the book of Ephesians was, the author is Paul, and Paul is writing this letter to a church or a people in Ephesus. So he was writing that book specifically to Christians living in Ephesus. Ephesus was this port city that was incredibly dark, and there was prostitution and idols, and people who were Christians were being persecuted and murdered and ripped out of their homes. So so they could gather and corporately worship Jesus together, they would have this little fish symbol on the outside of their homes, and that would let them know, okay, this is a safe place where we can go and talk about and grow in our relationship with Jesus. So when you read the book of Ephesians through that lens, you can see the language, and you can like the book, like the Bible is not written to us, but it is written for us. So there's this, I say all that to say, there's this verse in Second Timothy, in Second Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. It's pretty well known, but it's pretty much all scripture is God breathed, and it's good for all these things, right? Teaching, rebuking, so on and so on. But this word reproof means to dismantle and destroy. God wants you to dismantle and destroy the way that you see God, the way that you see yourself, and the way that you see people, so that you can reappropriate the way that you interact with the world and the way that you see yourself. And he wants to build you up in a new foundation so that your response to whatever you interact with in life is going to be different. But at the root of it, he wants you to know him. And like that's what life is about. Like the greatest thing you can ever know is know that God loves you. And the greatest thing you can ever do is love him back. So building myself up in a new foundation and replacing lies. Like we tell ourselves all these lies, and then if you believe a lie long enough, you will believe that lie to be a truth, and you will live if that lie is a way that you should construct your worldview, the way that you interact with people, the things that you do. That's why pornography is so dangerous. Because if you believe that a person is a product, like it's bigger than you it's bigger than you like not understanding like sex. It's if you see a person as a product, their value to you is going to be indicative of that. Why should I treat this person with respect? Why should I respect their time? Why should I respect their schedule? Why should I respect their opinion? Why they are this. Like if I see women in that way, it's like I'm going to treat them in that way. So if I think that love is lust, I'm going to see love all wrong because lust takes, love gives. So your life is not about taking things and consuming things. It's about giving. Because when you give, you receive. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son so that you can receive everlasting life. You deserve to perish and be eternally separated from him, but he loves you, and love is indicative of choice. He wants you to choose to accept the gift that he's already given you, that he did on your behalf, that you could never earn, because the gift, you don't earn gifts. You don't earn your birthday, it just is. So by receiving that love, it changes the way that you see yourself. And and to go back to what you asked, when you change the way that you see yourself, you will change the way that you interact with people. And the proxy of that will be healthy relationships.
Thank you so much for today. Thank you for just putting this out, brother. I feel like just this conversation is really going to be kind of the launching off point between you and I. I don't know. I feel that there's going to be a lot more going
We
on
didn't
between
even
the
get to
two.
dig into the fitness aspect.
We didn't even get. I mean, we could go a whole nother. But I'm feeling that we're gonna get you. We're definitely gonna have you back on because we didn't talk fitness. We didn't talk like church, Craig Shell, the things that you're building now, and
Yeah.
all these other things. So we got a part two that's definitely gonna
Oh
come
yeah,
out
let's
of
do it,
this.
man.
But
There's
we're
so much more that I want to share with you. I'm so long winded when I tell my story, but gosh, man, I think in
it's
a
all good
moment.
because I did a good amount of research, and I feel there were some parts today that I haven't heard shared, and I haven't listened to everything that you put out there, but I really feel we maybe touched on some things that maybe haven't been shared and from a different lens and in a different angle. So I'm not too concerned with the length that we went. The good thing is I know the guy that runs this podcast pretty well. So I have a little bit of pull with who comes back on. So I definitely feel that we're definitely going to be making a round two. But you got an upcoming baby, and yeah, let's just maybe. I got one last question that we end every single episode with. But if people want to find more about Joshua Broome, the things you're working on, and kind of what's on your heart right now. Because I know you got some really exciting things. So, in 60, 90 seconds, kind of, do your little elevator pitch on some of the exciting things that are up and coming for you right now, and then we'll end it with our final question here at the end.
Yeah. So kind of the central point of everything I'm doing can be found on my Instagram. So all of my social media, it's I am Joshua Broome. There's an E on the end of my name, but I am Joshua Broome, and that's where you can contact me for speaking engagements, preaching, motivational talks. I advocate against pornography, all those kind of talks. But for me, I am going to be in San Diego in October, and I'm working with a group of people, and we're going to put together some video curriculum and it's specifically answering 5 questions. Ultimately, what is porn? How can I understand how it impacts me? How can I change the way that I see porn and myself? How can I turn away from it? um, what is that look like practically, and what does that look like spiritually, and how can I continue to walk in freedom? Because John 19:30 says, so it was the last thing that Jesus said before he took his last breath and he died on the cross. He said, in the Aramaic word teletestai, which means it is finished. So it is finished. Hell, death, sin, and the grave no longer has any power over you. But so I say that to say, as a Christian, you will still fail. And the biggest mistake that we could make is as we are making progress, we believe that a momentary failure, that means I have to start over. But we forget to look back and how far we've come. So pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving. So that is my biggest message. If you mess up, you are not your failure. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep it moving because you've already come so far. So I'm working on that. I'm really excited about that. In October, I'm going to be on the 700 Club. That's incredible. My grandmother was a huge fan of Billy Graham, and the fact that I'm going to be on the same program that him is just absolutely bizarre. There's this new app called Tome. I'm filming a video devotional for them next month. I'm not sure when that will be out. Tome is incredible. It's like really high quality, like video devotionals. It's amazing. It's a paid app. Um, yeah, I'm doing
Amazing.
that.
No, yeah, we'll get all that plugged down, and if there's anything I could add a value or contribute to what you guys are building out there in October. We have an entire 16-week curriculum that I've personally taken about 100 men in a one-on-one capacity, and then our company has at this point it's about 1,200 men begin to build the new life without pornography. So we come from a very unique perspective, like understanding what it's doing from a neuroscience level. We've had Dr. Trish on multiple times. I obviously have the health and background, and we take a real holistic approach. So I know you guys probably have quite a few experts. If there's anything that I could pass along your way for what you guys are working on out there, I'd love to support.
Yeah, so
all that.
I like I was telling you, so I am launching a podcast through a network, and so I don't want to necessarily plug it because I haven't like we just got the yes on that now, so like we're still like buying equipment and have yet to like nail down a name and a specific vision for it, but I
Well,
think that
around the time that launches is maybe when we could go ahead and just kind of maybe coordinate if everything happens okay with the baby and whatnot, depending upon schedule. So maybe we'll kind of use that as kind of the guiding point on when we do the second conversation. When you got more of those details worked out, and then we'll bring the fitness and training and then all the other stuff we didn't hit on here today. Because this is
so much. Like when I initially met you, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so much stuff I want to talk about, and we did not talk about one thing that I was excited. I mean, there's a lot that I was excited to share with you. That I think is beneficial for people to hear, but there's stuff that I was excited to talk about with you specifically, because like I love fitness. It is still like my world. Like that is like the thing that is as far as like a hobby goes. That is the thing that I love most.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go ahead and I'm gonna extend the invitation. Just see, I'll do it here publicly. So I'm starting on 9/6. So it'll be the day that is it this episode is gonna air? No, the week after this episode airs. I'm taking a group of men through develop the quit porn and get ripped challenge. So I'm literally taking. It's going to be a physical transformation for 16 weeks, and we're going to run them through our curriculum. There's a $2,500 cash prize. We have weekly coaching calls. Maybe I can have you on as kind of a guest, speak coacher, on one of those calls. Just kind of speak to the men, since it's such a passionate thing. So there's kind of a public, announcement for anybody that's already enrolled or hasn't yet got their spot. That we're going to have this big name here. So amazing, bro. Well, we have this last question we end every single episode with. Obviously, the title of the show. It is called the Superhuman Life, and the name has really been it's a product of my own story. Everything we're doing here is out of my own transformation. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's more of a belief, or the way that I go about how I try to show up in the world. It's the understanding for me that we were created for a purpose. So we talked about that personal relationship with our Lord or with our Creator. But then secondly, like we're given an assignment here, and we're given one body to really bring and manifest that purpose or mission in life too. And we have to take the control. And this is where the fitness side of things, it's like understanding, like we need nutrition, training, and all these things. So when I talk about living a superhuman life, it's understanding what your purpose is, and then being fully aligned and having the plan in place that you're doing the work. But I love to always get the guest take. So as we bring it home here today, Joshua Broome, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Yeah, I think living a superhuman life is defined in you making small decisions each and every day, and understanding that consistency trumps everything else. So by showing up each and every day and giving your best doesn't necessarily mean I'm getting this result. It's about intentionality, it's about consistency, and it's about just being present in each and every moment. So for me, like, um, I think it's so important where like I work out 7 days a week, but the reason I do that is because I want to show up, and each and every day it's not like I might not hit like, chest and back, just like a gnarly like push pull split like each and every day. There's some days like on a Saturday where I want to spend extra time with my family. Like maybe I'm just gonna hit like a quick like 20 minute, like cardiovascular workout and get a pump real quick. But like for that, for me, it allows me to be more present. So by being intentional with my movement and being intentional with my time, it allows me to be intentional with my family. So just knowing what works for you, and I think like that is for me what allows me to have that superhuman mindset where I want to be present each and every day, and I'm going to be present because of my choices, my small choices and big choices. Because by being consistent in all things, it leads to that big thing that you're trying to consume or you're trying to pursue.
Yeah, love that so much. And we're ending, right on a point that we addressed at the beginning, the intentionality piece, like needing, understanding you need, whether it's a purpose statement or a set of values that you direct and guide your life on. You can't be intentional without having that as the beginning of how you guide. So brother, thank you so much. Guys, we know we went a little bit overextended here today. So if you chop this up and listen to it, over the course of 2 sessions, we appreciate everybody for lending us ears. Hopefully there was something of value, but hopefully, maybe this has reshaped kind of the way that you maybe look at what you may be consuming, or just shined a light on the real darkness that's kind of going on inside of the industry, and how we need to accept ourselves first and understand that we are made whole and complete, but also like we're not here to consume other individuals. Like we're like humans weren't put here to be products for our consumption. They're other they're other humans, and they need our love just as much as we need the love of others. So we appreciate everybody. If you guys haven't done so yet, and you want to continue to support the show, you can do that in 2 ways. Obviously, if you're listening on Apple and you haven't done so yet, we appreciate all those 5-star in written reviews. But more importantly, if there's somebody in your life that is maybe struggling with some guilt or shame, or struggling with still consuming this, or struggling with finding value or purpose or meaning in their life, if you can do us this favor and share this conversation with them, that could be the greatest way that you could support us, but you could help them as well. But we love you guys so much. For Joshua Broome, Frank Rich, see you guys next week.